Hey, today I want to talk about source of truth. I've been hearing that term a bit in a couple of podcasts that I listen to as it relates to technology. And I like the phrase, and I wanted to talk about it from an IT perspective and from a non-IT perspective that I thought was interesting. But before I get into the non-IT perspective, let's read the actual a definition that I found for a source of truth. And this is one I came up with. In the context of information technology, a source of truth refers to a single authoritative source of data or information within an organization. This source is considered the definitive and most accurate representation of the data it contains, and it is used to resolve any discrepancies or inconsistencies that may arise in other systems or databases. And they summarize by saying, by establishing a source of truth and implementing effective data governance practices, organizations can improve decision making, reduce operational costs, and enhance their ability to serve customers and stakeholders. And I thought, well, that's a great definition. It's nice to have a common source of truth. You know, I didn't mean to talk about this, but I'm gonna say this real quick. I'm in a fraternity, and in fraternities, you take sometimes a pledge or an oath, and I know some people have problems with it because they say, well, as a Christian, your yes should mean yes and your no should mean no. Well, just yesterday, I saw all of these people in Congress taking an oath of office. And the reason they do that is because it's not a Christian organization. When I'm amongst Christians, I don't feel like we need to take an oath because we are all on the same sheet of music. We're all dealing with the same source of truth. Because my fraternity is not a Christian organization, by what other standard do we hold people to some source of truth? And it's through the oath, the same way they did it yesterday in Congress. My understanding is they do it in the police department. They do it in, I have firefighter friends, and they said they have a similar oath. There's the Hippocratic Oath for the medical industry. I believe lawyers have an oath too. As someone with a CISSP, I have an ethics pledge that I have to live up to. Which leads me into this. I think having a source of truth is good because without it, you just end up with preferences. And preferences can change depending on popular belief. For me, my source of truth is God's word, plain and simple. I believe it should be used for everything. Because without God's source of truth, everything else is just a preference. And that can make people nervous because they're like, well, we're a secular nation. We shouldn't be led by any God or sense of morality. And I thought it was interesting that the Speaker of the House yesterday mentioned a prayer that Thomas Jefferson had uttered many a time publicly. And he read that in Congress. I believe Congress actually had a prayer there too. So we're not as secular as people want to believe. If they're that secular, then give me all of your money that says in God we trust. How about that? But some people say you can't legislate morality. Besides countering that by telling someone, well, our laws are actually based on a sense of morality. Any lawyer would tell you that our legal system is already based on God's sense of morality. Rather than just saying that, I would ask you this. Without using morality, how would you explain to someone that it's wrong for the government to come and take your stuff? Without using morality, how would you explain to someone that it's wrong to murder innocent life? And when you really think about it, the reason why we're nearly universal on those two things, the reason why we know it's wrong is because God said it's wrong. The reason why we know it's wrong to steal is because God said it's wrong to steal. Why we know murder is wrong is because God said murder is wrong. When we step away from that, we're dealing in preferences. And you say, well, people will never have a preference for murder. People will never have a preference for theft. In California, I believe it was San Francisco, but if not San Francisco, definitely some places in California, they decided we're not going to prosecute anyone or arrest them if they steal anything less than $900 in value. And so thieves would just go shopping in $899 worth of increments, $900 worth of increments, and they wouldn't get prosecuted. I believe they had a recent election here that changed that, and people started getting arrested because the people decided their preference was to go back to law and order. Also nationally and in different states, clearly in this past election, some people, for them, the top issues were not jobs and immigration and inflation. For them, the big preference was still having the ability to have in utero baby termination. Abortion was the big issue for them. But I believe also on that particular issue, folks are coming back to God's way of doing things. The reason why we know, even if you don't think you have some sort of non-secular beliefs, that certain things like murdering innocent life or theft are wrong, it's because God said it is. And the reason why we feel it is because He put that on our conscience. And when we're stepping away from that conscience, then there's a rub, there's some shame. I like the way a man named Ray Comfort defines the word conscious. He says it's a compound word where con means with and science means knowledge. So it's with knowledge that we know we're doing wrong. It's with knowledge that we know that we're sinning, and that's where the shame comes from. I'm going to tell a couple of quick things and then we'll wrap up. When I worked in Virginia, one of the jobs I had, I worked with a guy who was at the Department of Defense. We were working with the Navy. He was actually a retired Navy veteran, 30 years, and he's a Christian. So during breaks, we would talk about a lot of things. And one day he told me his favorite scripture was in Proverbs 3, that portion that reads, trust the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will guide your path. And I don't know if that's my favorite, but it's definitely one of the favorites. And I'm glad that he told me that, because I can see how it's worked out in my life. My divorce process was more protracted and longer than the peace that I had in the marriage. The marriage, showed signs of trouble very early on. So I was hoping that the termination of it, even though I don't like divorce, would be more expedient. COVID had something to do with it not being that case. And my spouse herself had something to do with it not being expedient. So the good news, though, is that if things had happened in my timing, I would be in a worse situation today. I was frustrated with it at the time, but looking back, working in God's timing worked out so better, and I'll explain how. She wanted us to sell the house so she can get her portion of it out, her financially out of that house, and move on. I didn't want to sell a house with her. I thought we were going to lose our shirt since we didn't own the house very long to begin with. But because so much time had gone by, at least the stock market went up to the point where I could take money out and buy her out and own the house myself. And then if I decided to sell a house, I could do it alone and not with somebody who was hostile. So I did that. And about a year after owning the house myself, I wanted to move back to Texas. I came to Texas to do a house hunting trip in the spring of 2022. If you remember that time, nationwide, the housing market was in a frenzy. It was a big time seller's market, I guess low inventory, and people were just bidding up houses big time. One of the first houses I saw that I liked, the asking price was $533,000. My agent said, in order to have a shot at this, you need to come in at $600K. We put together an offer, and I was uneasy about doing that. So I pulled my offer, but I wanted to keep an eye on where this particular house was going financially, how it closed, and it was like a 30-day close. So I found out what it closed at. Remember, this house was $533,000. They were asking for it, and it closed at $677,000. $144,000 above asking price, 27% above asking price. I couldn't make a move on it anyway because my house in Virginia had not sold. After 2 months, my house in Virginia had not sold. I didn't even get one offer on my house in Virginia. In the best housing market of my life, the best seller's market of my life, put it that way. So when I went back to Virginia, dejected that I didn't get a deal here because my house in Virginia hadn't sold, I replaced that agent using the help of the agent here. He helped me interview some folks out there, and we found someone who got my house to, I got a good price, and I got 100% of the asking price. It didn't get bid up, but I got what I was looking for. Came back here in September of 2022, saw this house, and I didn't have to bid it up. In fact, I offered 6% less than asking price because that seller's market was dying down, and they were happy to take my offer to help make them whole. They built this house. I didn't get it brand new, but I got it 10 months old. And the delta between what my house sold for in Virginia and what I had to spend to buy this, even after paying closing costs, the delta in all that was just about the same amount of money I needed to buy my spouse out. So I put that money back into the stock market. I put it back into my account. So it's almost like I financially got out of that relationship with nothing, for nothing. She ended up getting cancer. I ended up in a better financial situation because I leaned on God's understanding and His time as my source of truth. That ended up almost better than I expected. Well, I'm going to get some exercise in, going to get something to eat, get back to studying for that job that starts in about 9 days. And because the Cowboys have laid an egg, I guess I'll be rooting for the Pittsburgh Steelers later this evening. Glad you tuned in. Consider subscribing, consider commenting. Tell me about your sources of truth and any stories that you have. Like it, comment on it, share it. Consider subscribing. I'll see you next time.